Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Vanilla Minecraft, and first things first, apologies for missing last week. I really hate doing that, skipping a video when I don't exactly put these out too frequently in the first place, but unfortunately, when I went to record last week on Thursday, because I was a little bit behind, but I went to record on Thursday thinking that I was going to get a lot done and try and catch up on everything, and unfortunately, my server was down. It then proceeded to stay down until Sunday afternoon, a solid 3.5 days of downtime. I was less than enthused, to the point where I actually replaced my server and I went with something a little bit more powerful to kind of hopefully not have that problem in the future and reduce some of the general lag I've been having recently as well. Anyway, that's all boring talk, not stuff you guys need to worry about. So what is it that we're doing here today? Well, as you may recall last time, if you can think back a full 2 weeks, we built this giant 50-block tall flower and we put a flower farm in the top of it. And we also got that flower farm mostly functional. So that's all well and good, but it does still have two main problems. One is that there's a couple types of flowers that it's not actually picking up, and the other is that we're not actually gathering the flowers that it is picking up and doing anything with them. We don't have any storage system for this yet. So I want to solve both of those problems today. The first being the flowers that this thing is missing. Now, it's missing two types of flowers. Hello. And yes, this place is still an absolute death trap. But it's missing two types of flowers. One, are you really going to jump all the way down here? No. Or yes? Anyway, it's missing two types of flowers. One being the poppy, which I'm not particularly worried about because I have an iron farm. I've thrown out tens of thousands of poppies, so I don't really need a farm for them. We may eventually build a contained poppy farm just for the sake of having it, but for right now, it's not a problem. The second type of flower that it's missing, though, is dandelions, and I do want a dandelion farm because we don't have an infinite source of those, and I do actually use them. So, I've looked around our flower forest. There's a few different spots that'll work for it, and one of them is basically right here, right off the edge of this little grass patch. There's a 5x5 area that I want to turn into a dandelion farm. So that should work out fairly well, and it also means that we can do something with this pond area, which I'm actually really excited for, because I do want to kind of integrate the pond into our build here. I want to try and build some giant lily pads, maybe some giant cattails along the edge, other, watery type flowers, stuff like that. I think that that'll be really, really cool. And when I first saw this spot, I thought that it would be perfect to build a water lily that was containing our dandelion farm. Now, I'm not sure that we'll actually be able to pull that off, because I've tried to build a water lily in creative mode, and they are really tricky. Like, to build them at a reasonable scale, they end up looking really chaotic, because they're a very intricate flower. So I'm not sure that we'll be able to go that route. I'll experiment with it a little bit yet, but realistically, we're probably going to have to go with something a little bit more simplistic, because when I tried to build them, it either looked really messy, or I tried to make one that would actually look good, and I had to keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger, and by the time it actually really looked good, it was like 47 blocks across, almost the same size as our giant flower up there, actually, from petal tip to petal tip. So that's a little bit too big for this pond area, at least right now. There's some big plans I might have for the pond itself, but we'll talk about that later on. For right now, though, I'm going to go and try and take care of our dandelion farm situation, get at least the farm itself up and running, and try and figure out a good flower covering for it, and we'll see how it looks in the end. I may end up having to redo this a few times, but we'll see. So, I'll get back to you guys once that's done, and we'll move on from there. So here is our Dandelion Farm flower, and I think it's okay, though it's probably still going to get modified a little bit yet. Some of the shapes are a little bit off, and it also still feels just a little bit too simplistic to me, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. As I said earlier, once you start going more complex and you try and add more shape to them, they start getting a little bit messy and chaotic looking. But I think that maybe it could use just a little bit more. Like maybe some small purple petals that go in between these, for example. That might look okay. I'll have to experiment with that off camera, but for right now, I think that this will do just fine. And the dandelion inside of it is working just fine as well, as is this little stream thing I've set up. Now, I'm not entirely sold on this idea just yet. It's not technically in its final shape, because until we redo this area, because we are going to be doing some pretty hefty landscaping across this entire biome. So until we do that, it's kind of hard to know exactly what this will look like in the end. But I think it's okay. I may end up eventually removing this and just gathering the items through the ground, but for right now, this is how we'll leave it. So the idea is basically that the flowers will fall down from right there. They'll end up landing right around here, and they get swept down into this cave and flow to the back, where they'll fall down a shaft and end up in a water stream that'll take them off to our storage room. And of course, our dandelions will also meet up with that water stream down below. We already have a tube that goes underground to collect those. And yeah, that'll lead over to our storage room, which, well, that's what we need to do next. Now, the issue is that I don't actually know where we're going to put that. I have a few ideas for the storage room. I've been kind of on the fence about what I wanted to do with it, but I think I have a pretty good idea. Now, I just need to find somewhere to put it, and I need to get some resources together. So I'm going to cut away for a second, get all of that sorted out, and I'll be back with you guys in just a minute. So I think that this spot right here is going to be as good a spot as any for our storage room. It's relatively flat and easy to work with, it's fairly close to our main flower farms, and it's also not in the way of anything else that I already had planned in the area. So I think this is probably where we're going to put it. And so now the question is, what are we doing for the storage room itself? And like I said before, I actually did have several ideas for this. Originally, I wanted to put it in a flower bush type of structure, something with just a bunch of little budding flowers on top of something that looked like a bush, and honestly, I tried to build it, and it's probably possible to make it look okay, but when I tried, it just kind of looked like a big green blob with some little flower buds on it. Or, at best, it looked like a melting cactus that was blooming. Not exactly ideal. So, we may do something like that in the future, but not today. I also was considering putting it inside of a giant Rafflesia flower. Rafflesia? I don't know how it's pronounced. But that would also look really cool. Those flowers look really interesting. But unfortunately, putting an entire storage room into the middle part of one of those flowers would mean it would need to be very, very large. So we'll probably build another one. I actually have a kind of a cool idea for what we can do with a flower like that. But that's not what we're going to do today either. I think that what we're actually going to end up doing is building a flower bed of smaller flowers. So rather than building something ginormous like our farm flower over there, we'll build a bunch of really small flowers, things that are only, 3 or 4 blocks across, and make this kind of big, intricate build out of a ton of them, and then have our storage system kind of built into that. So you'll walk down, maybe step into the ground a little ways, and you'll be inside the storage system, and then you look up and you'll see all these little flowers kind of peeking over the edge. And I think that'll look pretty good. I hope. It might actually turn out kind of terrible. Who knows? But I'm going to try it out. We'll see how it looks in the end. And worst case, I'll just have to build something else afterwards. But I'm going to go ahead and get to that. I actually have some prep and stuff to do. I want to go ahead and get our flower farms sending over the flowers underground over to this area before I start really building it. And then I'll start the builds and, well, we'll see how it goes. I think that turned out okay overall. It's a little bit different, for sure. It's definitely a change of pace versus building our ginormous singular flowers, and overall I think it's kind of a cool concept. Could probably use a little bit of tweaking yet, and some of the colors are a little repetitive. I should probably randomize that a little bit more. But overall, I like the concept. Now, obviously, I did move over from where I said I was going to build this. Originally, it was going to be built over here, and I opted against that mostly because this spot just felt a bit better for it. Originally, I was against the idea because I'll be doing some very heavy changes to this area, but I think that this spot right here should be fine. So I'll probably talk to you guys about some of these changes that I want to make to this place in a minute, but let's head on down here and see what we're working with so far. Down we go. And here is our flower storage system. I think the area itself is kind of neat when you're down here with all the little flowers kind of peeking over the edge. And you can walk up and down our little kind of fence staircase thing from the fences underneath the carpets. I think that's always a fun trick to use. So, yep, that's our storage system. I think it looks kind of cool. It is all functional, I think. I've tested it just a little bit. I ran the farms for maybe a minute or two, and I think it looks pretty good. And then we have this area right over here. So we have two buttons. One will turn on our 2 tall flower farms, which we don't have yet, so this is effectively doing nothing. But when we turn that on, this side turns lime green to indicate that it's turned on. You can turn it back off like so. Again, not really doing anything. I figure eventually we will build our 2 tall flower farm inside of a flower, kind of like we have with the other ones. I did consider just building it below this, but I figure since we have a normal flower farm flower, we should probably have a 2 tall flower farm flower as well. So maybe at some point we'll build a giant sunflower or something along those lines, and we can put our farm in there. But if we flick this switch over here, it's going to send a signal off to our current flower farms, and they will start churning out flowers and sending them over here. And it'll take just a minute for that to kind of kick into action and get them sending over. But once those make their way out of the farms, down through the river, and then down the stream that I have set up below, they'll start coming in, filtering into our system. We'll probably start hearing some clicking from seeds being destroyed. Let's go ahead and actually turn this off, because we don't need to run it too terribly long. I imagine the flowers should start flowing in any second now. We can hear the clicks going on, so let's see, 34, 61, 44, 15. Yep. There's a couple dandelions flowing in. Well, you get the idea. Basically, all of our flowers will flow in to our 3 double chests we have for each one, which is arguably a little excessive. I decided to do that mostly because our flowers are going to be a little bit imbalanced. So, for example, red tulips we get quite a lot of, versus, say, oxeye daisy, we don't get very many of. And unfortunately, that's a very hard thing to avoid with flower farms, especially when we were constrained to a very small area in order to stick it inside of a flower. So we are going to get far more of certain types than others, but I don't think that's really a big deal. I'll get plenty of every single type from running this relatively quickly, so not really too worried about it. That being said, there is one thing that I am very, very worried about with this project, and that's that this area that we have to come down to get any of our flowers out from, and this area that we'll be AFKing in as our flower farm is running, is basically an absolute death trap. So there's absolutely nothing right now preventing mobs from crawling over these walls and just jumping down on us. Most notably creepers, which could just fall in and blow up before we have any chance to react, even if we were here, and they would take out all of my storage system and just ruin everything. So we need to solve that little problem. Now, there's one thing that would just kind of be an easy solution, and that's to put a layer of glass in here, just like maybe lime green glass. I think that that would still look just fine, and it would be much safer in here, so I might do that regardless of how any of these other things work. But there is one other solution, and to be fair, that's not actually a full solution. We still have the doorway to work on. But there is one thing that I want to try out that might work really well to keep mobs out of this area entirely, and it would still look decent. It wouldn't be ugly. And that is the old pit under the carpet trick. So if you've never seen this before, and I don't know if this is still a thing, we're going to run a test in a second, but if you leave some carpet floating above a pit, I think this is 7 or 8 blocks deep, Back in the day, at least, mobs wouldn't cross this. They wouldn't recognize that they could walk on the carpet. So they would just walk up to the edge and they would think that they would fall if they'd walk any further, so they would stop. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that still works. I feel like there may have been an AI change that made them register that and they won't kind of fall for that trick anymore. So I set up this little test. I'm going to wait for nightfall, and I'm going to try and get a zombie or two over here and see if they will cross that line to come and try and eat me if I'm sitting in here. And if that works, if it prevents mobs from crossing, I'll surround our flower farm area with this, and it should hopefully prevent mobs from crossing over the line. So I'll get back to you guys once it's nighttime and once we can test this out, and, well, we'll do some testing together. All right, night has fallen. I have a couple zombie buddies coming with me, and let's see if they'll attack me. Doesn't look like it, does it? Oh, but that can happen, and that's always been able to happen. But you can totally tell that it works because the zombie won't even come out of that area now that he's trapped in there. So they could technically push each other in, but realistically, if you're not on the edge goading a bunch of zombies, it should be completely fine. Like, they wouldn't be able to, like, weave their way in normally if they was just wandering around along the outside. Or even if they were targeting you, they wouldn't really... Please die. Okay. So yeah, I mean, we're completely safe in here until some zombies manage to push each other in. Or a skeleton shoots me out, or something stupid like that. But basically, if we surround our flower storage area with this trick, if we put like a deep pit around the entire thing and put carpet on top of it, no mobs should cross that, because the same logic applies to everything else as well. So, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put a pit around our flower area, and cover it in carpet, and I'll get back with you guys when that's done. Okay, so it's not working perfectly. It's strange. I've tested this with a few zombies at this point, and it seems like some zombies are way smarter than others, and I didn't realize that was a thing. But this guy, this guy is a genius. He knows exactly how to get to me every single time, because if they go across the corners of these blocks, they can still see their path to get through. And it seems like only certain zombies realize that. And it's not always like zombie villagers or anything. I've seen multiple zombies do that. And once they do it once, it's just like they always know. They have awesome memory, apparently. And it also doesn't prevent spiders, I've discovered. This guy managed to pick up the string from a spider that got in here and attacked me. So I imagine if I widened it to 2 blocks across, to like a 2-block gap all the way around, that would probably prevent the spiders. But I'm not entirely sure. Either way, I think the big concern, the main one that I really want to keep out, is creepers. And I'm probably going to make myself a little AFK room down here to keep myself safe anyway. So, in general, it's not too bad. But I am still a little bit leery about the mob situation here. So, even though this works kind of for the most part, if I were to make this too wide, I think it would work pretty well. But even so, I may still want to put the glass ceiling in here. I'll see what it looks like when I put it in, but I think I'd feel a lot better knowing that something couldn't just randomly drop in on me at any time. So I may do that. I'll definitely add an AFK room. I'll probably try and increase the coverage of our pit around to try and prevent mobs from walking in a little bit more. Overall, I just want to try and keep mobs out as much as possible, is the thing. So I'll take care of all of that in the future, but for right now, I think I'm going to call it a day. Okay, then. Hello, Rain, once again, for the 7 millionth time today. Anyway, that is going to be our project for today. We're definitely going to be back here. I'll make these tweaks that I mentioned earlier off camera and show those to you guys once they're done. And next time we're out here, we'll probably be working on some new, less utility things. So, yeesh, full-on storm now. Oh, geez, you found your way in now too, didn't you? Okay, then. Turns out my security is not very good at this point. Really need to get rid of that corner that they managed to find their way in on. But yeah, next time we're over here, we'll be working more on aesthetic things. So, for example, this area over here, I'm not sure that we'll be doing this next time, but this entire area between our ponds and the ocean, I would like to kind of remove that. I would like to make it so our pond is much larger. That way we have a lot more space to work with, so we can do things like giant lily pads and whatnot, as I mentioned earlier, and not make it look too overly crowded. So I want to do that. I want to expand out into other areas. I want to try and take advantage of this forest hills that we have around, because that's some really cool terrain to work with. And all kinds of stuff. And we may even be taking this place a little bit further than I originally intended. So, like I said last time, I want to build more giant flowers and stuff like that, but a lot of you guys really like the idea of turning this into kind of a fantasy biome. Something like, you know, Alice in Wonderland or the Little World stuff at Disney and things like that. And that would actually be really, really cool to integrate some fantasy-style stuff into here. So we may go down that route as well. So as always, if you have ideas for that stuff, be sure to tell me. I always like reading it. And, well, we'll deal with that in the future. For today, I've got to get going. It's 6:15 in the morning, and I still have to edit this entire video. So, I will see you guys next time. I'll try to be on time for the next episode and not miss another one. Last few weeks have been a bit crazy, but I think I've got him under control now. So, I'll try and get back to you guys nice and early next week. Hope you have an amazing day. I'll see you guys next time.